This ought to be one of the most natural of things, that a person that is alive dies. And yet this is one of the most difficult of things, that a person that we value, cherish, and means so much to us is no longer here to our touch, to be able to answer a question, or, in Doris' case, to tell us what we ought to do. It is with joy today that we acknowledge that life is nothing but a minute, and that we ought to treasure every second of it to give the glory to God, and that we ought not to waste time being angry or upset or throwing our hands in the air saying, I don't know, but take charge, make a decision. Good or bad, you lose more in the indecision than by a bad decision. In that much, Doris and I agree. My friends, it is through the good news that we remember that there is a time for everything, a season for every activity under the heavens, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace, a time to go to the beach, a time to go on a cruise, a time to go out and have fun, and a time to gather and to remember a beloved friend, daughter, sister, helper, encourager, disciple, and friend. Today we gather with that purpose. So I invite you, if you must laugh, laugh with all you got. And if you're to cry, there will be plenty of people here that agree with you. Today is a sad day. That much we can acknowledge. But we do not suffer the way that the world does. Through faith, because of faith, we can acknowledge that death is not the end, but the opportunity to face our Creator and to make sense of the brokenness of this world. My friends, would you join me in the call to worship as is printed in our bulletin? We are a resurrection people, called by God to live a resurrection life.
Let us live each day knowing that Christ has opened the way to new life, to be lived in fullness and forgiveness every day.
Even when our fate takes us through the dark valleys, we know we are never alone. Our risen Lord is always with us.
May this time of worship, reflection, and celebration be a worthy response to your love and sacrifice for us.
Amen. So I'm Janie.
And I'm Karen.
We're Doris's daughters. Thanks, Diane. Diane and Mom have been singing together for 47 years, so it's cool that she's continued her singing here. So when I was a kid, I could never understand funerals, why you would gather together with the person who most wanted to have the party right at the time that they weren't there. So we all know funerals are for the living, not for the person who's passed. But I feel that they're for the people who've connected with the person who's passed, and I love seeing all these faces because we know, how our mom connected with people. It was sort of a calling card. However, you connected with her. We are here to celebrate the life of Doris Ann Cool Downey Smith Barrell, or as we call her, Mom. So I have a secret to share with you. Mom talked about you behind your backs. A lot. You should have heard the stories about how awesome you are. What she talked about a lot was this group. The CCLs, the crazy church ladies. You know how Mom was. She'd take you out to lunch, so innocent. You'd show up, you'd meet other folks. She'd invite it out to lunch. Next thing you know, you're boarding a plane for New York City. You're walking up the gangplank of a ship to go on a cruise with Royal Caribbean. How many times did we hear about the fun you had as you sang, lunched, and adventured with her at a Hilton Head, New York City, Italy, San Antonio, Israel, Canada, Ireland, so many times on the high seas. How you played cards and bingo and ate crabs and ice cream and read and laughed. I must have sorted through 10,000 photos over the last few days that she kept of the treasured times that she had with so many of you. The stories I liked best, though, were about how the CCLs continued to change. New people came in, other people left, people like Sandy back in from Texas. She kept in touch with everybody. Once a CCL, you're always here. But then there's the stories about the people in this church. Leon, Mario, the Presbyterian women, the session, the kids programs, the clothing bank, the dinners she loved to theme and to organize, the funerals she ran with you. From the way Mom described it, this church works miracles every day, and she loved being part of it. So then we have the family. The best stories, really. How she'd brag on Jim's cooking at home and at the church and for bridge clubs, how he'd make tins of Christmas cookies they could share with the neighbors, about their shared love of a slew of rascally cats, and how he brought her tea and bagels by the pool every morning. And I have to tell you, when she'd come and visit Karen and I in Virginia, she'd be like, "Where are my bagels and tea?" And we're like, "You're on your own with us, Mom. You have to have Jim here to cook for you." Then we got stories about the 6 kids, 4 of Jim's, plus Karen and I. To Mom, we were one family. We were all worried over, deeply supported, accepted, and adored for who we were at our core. But as much as she adored us, of course, she adored the 9 grandchildren and 4 great-grandchildren more. How proud she was of every graduation, every new job, every marriage, every new baby. Who needs a car? Who needs a plane ticket? Who needs a shoulder to cry on? And who was up with her for traveling to France, Monaco, England, Ireland, Italy, Australia, New Zealand, Brazil, the Netherlands, me around the tip of Cape Horn when I said, the only place I'll go on a cruise with you, Mom, is to South America. And she's like, all right, I booked it. We're going.
And Norway.
And Norway.
Sweden, and Russia.
Yeah, what did I forget? Her big question, though, always, who's coming on the annual beach trip? More importantly, what are they cooking for dinner after Jim cooks the first night with chili and clam chowder for the weary travelers, and followed by Mom's famous chicken and dumplings? According to Mom, her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren are all brilliant, even though she would tell you she doesn't like children. And then she'd say, well, except for my own, of course, and a few like Sassy's Belle. She made a few exceptions. Going back to elementary school, we get into her DC friends. I hope some are getting to watch here today. This is where she grew up and where we grew up. She met our dad there in 5th grade. Her stories through high school and college, students she taught at Downey Music Studio, she kept in touch with for decades. She worked at Catholic U, kept in touch with folks there. She kept reinventing herself, ending up with her work there as an award-winning manager and trainer for a large real estate company. That's where she met Jim. My favorite work stories were her for teaching years, weird ones from travel, a former nun she was traveling with from Catholic U, who on a trip to Moscow might have smuggled out some original music from the Soviet Union. About a night, she was chatting away with Karen and I and mentioned getting lost in a cab and realized, oh, we were in Turkey. And we were like, behind the Iron Curtain? She's like, yeah, well, we didn't know, it was fine. And then she started teaching overseas in former Soviet republics. And next thing we know, she's being invited over to the Black Sea, to somebody's personal home, to come back and spend a weekend with us. And these are from folks that she just went to teach. She always made good money when she worked. She still made money editing. She had a book she was working on 3 weeks before she died. I contacted the editor to say she wouldn't be back in touch on the final edit, and they said she never even mentioned she was sick, just 3 weeks before she passed. Her work stories that were never about climbing the corporate ladder. They were about the connections she found and the friends that she made. A lot of the rest of you know Mom here from church, as neighbors, from playing cards, her doctors, local restaurateurs. Where's Chris? You each touched her life as I know she touched yours. If you look at the trajectory of someone's life, you can kind of guess their next step. For Mom, started off as a free spirit. She was raised by a single mother for many years with her mom. Her mom's friends, Grace Hooten, her friends were also Mom's best friends for playing cards, for traveling. She taught us that. This group of amazing women from the Treasury Department helped raise Mom to believe she could do anything. And she was smart enough to make that happen, graduating at the top of her high school class, then adding a degree from Mary Washington and a master's degree from Catholic U. Last page. Along the way, she was someone you could always turn to advice, but I love this about her too. As much as she befriended everyone, she always took time for herself as well, to crochet, to read, to pray, to watch British mysteries and movies, to plan, to organize, to swim, and maybe coax you to go with her to the theater, the opera, the ballet. Yes. So looking at that path, where's Mom now? What's her next step? Clearly, organizing is on her list. I'm sure she's got networking to be done, connections to be had, songs to be sung, problems to be solved, angel friends to be made. And while she's there, you know what? She's still going to be bragging on you about the end of her life, where you were right there, tempting her with card games and food, how Larry Barrell, sitting here, how Larry stepped in to be her primary caretaker. He was so kind and caring, about the help Christina brought to her and Jim, and how Karen practically lived there, during Mom's chemo treatments, how the church ladies helped us carpool from the airport, how Grammy's girls showed up to celebrate her last birthday with the cruise theme party. Good move. I'm like, she won't be up to it. They're like, we're going. Learn from their Grammy. When Mom said goodbye to me, strange last words, she said, I'm going to miss you. And it applies to everyone who is part of her life, because you gave her so much to brag about. The angels are going to be sick of hearing about all of you. But in between the brags, okay, get it together, Jane. Here's the message Mom asked me to tell you today. Please take care of each other, your friends, your family, and strangers. Watch out to make sure everyone is included. Take chances, go off on adventures, build an occasional new life for yourself. Eat lobster, even for breakfast. You've been there, you've witnessed this. Chris helps with that. Find the ice cream bar on the ship first thing. Figure out ways to include art, music, and theater in your life. befriend cats, be generous, be bold, take what life gives you and expand on it, learn from it, and find joy in it. And remember to take time for yourself. Mom had 87 years here on earth. She said it went by in a snap. So don't waste any of your time. Mom knows she's leaving a hole in your lives, and she asks that you fill that hole with love. Miss her, but don't miss out on life as you let her memory inspire you on your next amazing adventure. I know I should close by blowing my nose. I know I should close by saying rest in peace, Mom, but that's so not you. I'm sure you had a flat out when you got to the other side, but I feel your energy around us now as you meet with that bevy of angels and ask maybe one out to lunch and then another until next thing God's looking around, wondering where his angels have run off to. Heaven knows. God bless you, Mom, and Godspeed.
The family would like to invite further family and friends to come and share much of your stories, to encourage one another and to celebrate all that Doris meant to us and so much more. Now is the time to do so.
Okay. So, yeah, like, right after watching my own mother cry. So my name's Bea, and I'm one of Doris's granddaughters, and
Stephanie, one of the other ones. Shannon, another.
and Jenny, and my sister Sam couldn't be here today, but there's a few other grandkids. But I wanted to come up and just say a few words on behalf of her grandchildren, because she was such a special grandmother. We all called her Gram. Lovingly, she was smart, independent, solid. Like, she's watched us all go through our 20s and like, woo, and she's just like been a rock. So it is a void, a home base that I think, as much as I think she was sort of not ready to go, but she wasn't scared to go. But it's scary to think about, how do you fill that hole? So as I was thinking sort of about what to speak on, because public speaking is hard, especially when it's so close to your heart, but I said, let me do it, because she always pushed me to be courageous and to go beyond what I thought I could do. So I was looking through pictures of her, and I ended up coming across one from my niece's baby shower, and it was her great-granddaughter, Brooke. And I made her pose for the picture, but I had set up a whole table for my unborn niece, and it said, like, give some words of advice or affirmations. So I had her posing, and I texted the granddaughters, and I said, what do you think advice she was writing on that piece of paper, because I can't read it. And I said, I don't know what advice, but she had so much advice throughout life. So I made a list with some of my cousins just about things we learned from her, and some of the advice I took from her that I just wanted to share. So number one, always start planning your next trip before you finish the trip you're on. Which she did at the very last cruise. We were plotting and planning how she was gonna, through chemo and everything, how she was gonna get on this next cruise. So you always start before you finish. And more important than that, it's more about knowing when is the next time I'm gonna see you. She wanted to know, but understood when we couldn't come. Number two, always be open to new experiences. Graham approached the world with curiosity, and instead of an automatic no, she always encouraged us to think about maybe it could be a yes. So there weren't limits. to her, and she pushed herself out of her comfort zone. So through her example, I think we all picked up on that. Say yes to life and just see what unfolds. Number 3, I only wrote 5, so don't worry. Number 3 is the pivot. In life, you are never stuck. She went through many phases in her life and career. She was never afraid to take a leap or tap into a new talent. When I was going through a tough time at my job a few years ago, I was working in a hospital in the Bronx, and she picked me up with my mom, and we drove through my neighborhood, 'cause she always cared about where we lived, and she couldn't even come up to my apartment because I lived in like a 4th floor walk-up. But as we're driving, like, it's always stuck out to me. I said, like, I'm just so worried about what am I gonna do? I feel stuck. And she's like, B, you're like a cat. You could be thrown out of a 10-story window and you're gonna land on your feet. And she's not wrong, and she was the same way. But sometimes you need to be reminded, right? Like who you are and who you come from. And so that kind of confidence she instilled in all of us. She was raised in a time where things were not as easy for women, and she pushed beyond those glass ceilings, and she always landed on her feet. Number 4, always show up and celebrate people you love. She was at every graduation, every play my mom put on. She was there to debrief every accounting problem Karen had. Where did the $1 million go? Oh no, I hit that thing. So, here it is. So she showed up to everything. So she lived by the model of don't just tell people you care about them, show it. And she told me that she will continue to show up. We had a conversation when I was on a cruise with her in November of last year, and she said, I will be continuing to show up and consult in the afterlife. You're gonna have to listen a little harder, but I will still be there, and I will still be cheering you on. Number 5, travel. Take your dream trip, go somewhere you've never been before. She told me during that final cruise we took together that she had lived a really rich life, and of course she wanted to fit in more trips, but she was happy with everywhere she had been and all the challenges she had gone through. So she wasn't scared to go. She didn't want pain, and she was excited to see her mom again. She said, I'll miss you all, but I'll still be there. So, and then lastly, don't take things personally. She always was willing to help and be a rainbow on somebody's cloud, but she didn't turn other people's clouds into her own. And so that taught me, right, as a young woman, not to respect myself enough to have those boundaries and care about yourself. So to sum it up, live your life on your terms, show up. There's nothing a woman can't do. Enjoy art, see the world, love people. So thank you, Graham, for sharing your wisdom.
And ice cream can be a
And
meal.
ice cream is a meal. And don't let anybody judge you for that. It's your life, right? So thank you, Graham. Your legacy lives on in each person you've touched. And I'm excited, all the women in the family and men, but sorry. If you know Doris, that actually tracks, right? But just, and the men too, but just the legacy that she left for all of us. I'm excited to see where we all go, and thank you for being here. We love you. All right.
I just wanted to share that I'm very fortunate to have had her in my life. And she came into my life when I was 7. And she didn't have to be the best grandma ever, but she was. And she's always made me feel extremely accepted. And I feel like she's understood me more than one of the few people in the world that have ever understood me. I remember being in middle school or beginning of high school, and I had to write an assignment, an essay on your role model. And everybody else wrote one about some sports star or someone they know on TV, not anybody really in their life. And I wrote about Doris. And I said how I wanted to live my life so much how she had lived hers and not be afraid of anything. And that she's truly a Renaissance woman in that she transformed her life so many times to continue to be happy and spread joy and love, and to say never be stuck. And say you can do it. You'll land on your feet. And she'll be greatly missed. And she's, I think, the definition of a modern day Renaissance woman, for the many hats and things many hats she's worn.
I've come prepared, because this will be a miracle. Like so many others, I've been richly blessed by the friendship of this extraordinary lady. It was such a privilege to be part of her life in any way. I only wish I could find words that were strong enough and sweet enough and tender enough to convey all that she has been to me. There's so much to admire about her formidable intellect, her adventurous spirit, her generous nature. And I found this amazing, her patience with and understanding of human nature, which left me clueless most of the time. Her boundless curiosity and enthusiasm, and her willingness to embrace new changes. She was a prayer warrior who lived her faith. And oh, her incredible heart, not only for the family she loved so dearly, and yes, she talked about you guys a lot too, but for her many friends. We shared so many interests, our love for music, our choir, and especially our Cindy. We talked about her a lot. It was always good stuff. We bonded over our love for cats, large or small, domestic or wild. It didn't matter if it was a cat, we loved it. We shared a great love for reading, and we had so many discussions about books and authors, and there was always hot tea involved. I kept her favorite in my kitchen. We loved being in and close to water, and I knew that she used her morning exercise time for her prayer time. She had her list prioritized every day. Sometimes I was near the top. Probably more often than I would have liked. She has been my little girl's beloved Dory and one of Belle's church touchstones. Belle is only 5. Now, Doris was in her life from the beginning, and whenever she would come over for lunch and a visit, she could expect to have a lap full of toys and books that Belle insisted on sharing. And we'd have tea in the kitchen, and Belle would practice raising her pinky so that she could, and of course there were costumes involved. She's 5. Doris has been my mentor, my confidant, and so many times my guardian angel, literally, quite literally, by my side with that amazing love and practical help and rock-solid support. Her strength, her unwavering faith, and her abundant love were always there for me. I find comfort knowing without a doubt where she is right now, and that I will see her again. Thank you, Jim, for sharing with us, for sharing her with us, and for your loyal support all these years. We've benefited from and appreciated the so many dozens of cookies and casseroles that you treated us to whenever she asked. In fact, she hardly had to ask. She just knew that you would always do it. Doris, save my usual place beside you in choir, in whichever one of the heavenly choirs you've selected. I miss you terribly, my friend. But I am so very thankful for the gift of your irreplaceable friendship and love.
I had the great privilege of caring for your Doris, for your mama, and for your Graham in one of the last days that she was in the hospital. And I got to hold her hand, those impeccably manicured nails, the love of a good cup of tea, knowing that that would just about fix anything. I got to pray over her and comfort her and tell her all the things that we're saying today through my staff and my nurses hearing just indeed how wonderful she was. So I have a little bit of a privilege of sharing some sweet reflections and their heart, because it just would have been a little too much to be up here, but these beautiful CCLs, her friends, her sisters, her traveling buddies, her loves, her support, and as you all said, the taxi system, her choir mates, and just her buddies. They just had sweet words that they wanted to share. Miss Ellen Taylor says, almost 20 years ago, the four of us, Sandy Gardner, Ruth Toombs, Doris, and I traveled together as the Alto Gals. And then the Sopranos joined. And it evolved into the Crazy Church Ladies, and the rest is history. And for those that don't know, there is nothing crazy about these women, and they are not elderly. They are fun and wonderful and bring incredible joy to this church and to one another. Elaine shared, Doris was our guardian angel here on earth. She always gathered us together and directed us, whether it was to lunch to celebrate somebody's birthday, game day, a trip to Hilton Head, and on cruises. Becky shared, she coordinated us to help one another, and that we had any health issues, she was the one that was there. She had a huge heart and incredible organizational skills. Dawn says she was an encourager, always guiding us in a positive direction. Miss Patsy says, she showed us how to live life to the fullest, and each day God gives us to work, play, and enjoying our blessings. Miss Ruthie says, none of us will ever forget the fun conversations that we had by the pool in Hilton Head, nor will we forget the competitive spirits when we played clear the deck card games at night. Doris and I were, I'm sure there's another part of that story. Doris and I were roommates on many of our trips. Doris got me out of my comfort zone when Sassy Meadows, her college roommate Brenda, and I flew to Italy to celebrate her 80th birthday. With family and friends, there were a total of 10 staying in a beautiful old farmhouse. That was my most memorable trip with Doris. Last week, just this past week, 6 of us went on a cruise that Doris had made reservations for last February. Although it was bittersweet, we knew it was what she would have wanted us to do. We made a lot of toast to our dear friend and shared many memories of other cruises and trips. Mary Jane, MJ, said, I first met her when she and Jim came over for Christmas for a neighborly chat and to introduce themselves. They brought us cookies, which Jim made, and she asked if I had gone to church or were we looking for a church, and I said, yes. Mary Jane said, yes, I am looking for a church. And Doris brought me to her church, which happens to be First Presbyterian Church in Eustis. I owe it all to Doris for getting me to this church. I never felt more comfortable, more loved, more cared for than I do in this church. And I think we all kind of second that. Doris was such a blessing to me and so many people. She will be incredibly missed. She knows what heaven looks like, and someday we will meet again. And finally, Lou says, we all really know, all that I really know is how very much she will be missed. She was my mentor, she was a great friend, and always there when needed. Now we know that she's gone ahead to hold the light.
I played a very small role in Doris's life. My name is Denise, and seeing as though a lot of her talk would be to everybody that was here, I was her massage therapist. See, y'all know me. You know me, but you didn't know me. We had I traveled through her stories, all her trips. And you were right, she never would end one trip before she had the next one already ready. I told her one day, I said, you better get a bigger suitcase because I just may sneak along. It's always a kind woman, helped me through a lot of difficult times that I went through. And I will certainly miss her. I have a hole in my heart from losing a daughter, and there's a song that tells you, there's a hole in my heart in the shape of you, and I carry it wherever I go. There's just an extra hole in my heart right now, which I'm sure is all part of your hearts. We will never, ever forget her, and may we all continue with just glorious memories of her. Thank you.
I'll stand right here. I look at the firewall. You see the flowers there in the fifth seat. You go 2 seats down. That's where I sat. That's where I sat. And that seat isn't going to be empty, the fifth one. I'm quite sure at occasions I will hear her voice. But God bless, enjoy the journey. There's no do-overs.
I guess I'm last but not least. I'm sorry I have laryngitis. Of all days, they have it. Before I get into the kudos of thanking everybody, while some of my predecessors here were speaking, I thought of a few things. When we first got here 22 years ago, Doris was down here on a real estate trip, and she came back with a contract for a house in her hand. And I said, well, you know, where is it? Well, it's in a place called, it's outside of Eustis, whatever. And I said, well, how many bedrooms does it have? And she said, well, I'm not sure, but it's on a lake. And I said, well, tell me more about the house. Well, she said, I can't remember much about it except it's on a lake. That's all she cared about. And then less than a year after we moved in, we had a pool. So now she had a lake and a pool to sit out and look over. And that's what she liked to do, is sit by the pool and read and look out over the water. And while you people were talking about food, I did make some chili and clam chowder for tonight for dinner at home. Since that was a thing I made when we go on our summer trips. And another thing is that we were married 34 years, and when things got a little rough, I guess she'd go on a cruise or she'd go up and visit her. She'd go up and visit her daughters. And I guess I could say about the only thing we ever agreed on really was the way the toilet paper goes on the roller. It goes down that way. I don't care what you people say, it goes under. So that's what we agreed on. But I'd like to thank you all for being here today. It's nice that you can honor Doris like this. And I'd like to thank some people in Judy Kelly's Transportation Corps for transporting Karen to and from the airport. Becky Stam, I think, made a couple of trips, and Dawn Hoffmeister made a couple. Mario made a trip. Rick and Lisa Head and George Trentfield all took a turn at taking Karen to and from the airport, which is very appreciative. I'd like to thanks to Mario and Mel for their trips to the house to encourage Doris and to just visit and be sociable and just nice to talk to under this time. I'd like to thank Dr. Victoria Miller, who is here. She's our acupuncturist, and she's been a friend for several years, and she pokes holes in Doris and I every week. And she claims credit, and she's also a holistic medicine doctor. She claims credit for my being 92 years old, so. And anytime she can take credit, she will. And I'd like to thank some of our neighbors for being assistants. MJ McDyer is always close and is always helpful. And we had an interesting thing when Doris, several weeks ago, Doris slipped out of bed onto the floor before my son got here, and we couldn't get her, and it was only Karen and I, and we couldn't get her in bed, so we had to call out to the neighbors or EMT. So Willie Newsom came from across the street, and Brendan Jabor came from next door, and they got Doris back in bed. But I truly appreciate that. It's nice having neighbors like that. I'd like to thank Cindy and the choir, both choirs, for singing today, and also Diane Abel, and Marvin is going to sing a solo, and I appreciate them. It's interesting, Diane Abel lived with Doris before I knew Doris, and I remember when I decided to move in with Doris, I kicked Diane out, and Doris and I lived together, and that was 36 years ago, and we've been married 34 years, so we lived together in sin for 2 years. That's okay now, anything goes now. But back then it was. I'd like to thank Christina, who was mentioned before. Christina Newsom, she was very close to us. She's been our house cleaning gal for 7 years, plus a confidant, and there to help whatever we needed. She even trim bushes and all outside stuff, no matter what. She is a worker, and she's a very, very close friend, and we're very happy to have her being so close, and anything we need, she's there. But speaking of anything, I thank you for your condolences and your cards and your verbals and your spoken word. But, when people say to me, well, is there anything you need? And I say, well, I can't think of anything right now. Well, yeah, there's one thing, money. And as soon as you mention money, the cordiality sort of disappears. You know, so I don't know what it is about money, but it changes people, doesn't it? Like to thank Karen and Janie for all their help in taking care of Doris and helping around the house and helping me, because as you see, I'm kind of feeble. And anyway, they right now they've got a big job because Karen's been on the phone, seems like hours, trying to change bank accounts, change insurance, change this, that, and the other thing, and where Doris was involved. And Janie's been hauling out tons and tons of files and stuff. I thought she was bringing them in, and she's taking them out. I mean, she's filled the trash can twice, and now she's got 3 bags out on the garage floor ready to go out again. And unbelievable. 8 bags. Wow. Unbelievable the stuff Doris kept. But anyway, I did manage. I didn't go like the cruise too much where she was always ready to go. And she would make plans to go on a cruise and then let me know after it's all planned who's going. And by the way type thing, you know, do you want to come, you know, or not? It doesn't matter, we're going. Yeah. And I said, go ahead. It's a crazy church, ladies, and who... I'd like to thank the reception committee. You're going to have refreshments after this is over out there. And I did make some cookies and brownies. And I did say that the kitchen would be open in case there's ever another occasion here where you want chocolate chip cookies. I'd be happy to make them. How's that? I'll bet you're glad to hear that, right? Oh, and a very good thanks to hospice. It's unbelievable the help they've provided with a hospital bed, oxygenator, which is a way to provide oxygen through the tube, and a bedside table, and unbelievable supplies that you need to take care of someone like that. And last of all, and most of all, I'd like to thank my son Larry for coming down and taking care of Doris the last 2 weeks. His landlady up in Northern Virginia was sick and dying, and he was living in the basement apartment in her house, and he took care of her, very loving care, and she died unfortunately, but he did everything he could to help her, and he came down here and he did the same thing for Doris. I can't thank him enough. The last 2 weeks is like 24 hours of just getting up, giving her medicine and doing whatever, switching her in bed. And if it weren't for him being able to get her out, in and out of bed into a wheelchair, Doris would have been in the hospice house. And, you know, that nobody wants to keep going back and forth there when you can have it all at home. So I really appreciate everybody coming and everything, all the expressions of sympathy that you've given us, and we really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I come to the garden alone while the dew is still on the roses, and the voice I hear falling on my ear, the Son of God is and he tells me I am his own. joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. I'd stay in the garden with him, though the night around me be falling, but he bids me go through a voice of woe. The voice to me is calling, and he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever
She came to the office one day last year in the spring and told me, I have an idea. I said, okay. I want to take care of the sermon series for the summer. I said, okay. Here's how we're going to do it. I said, okay. This is what I want you to do. I said, okay. I give thanks to God for people like Doris. People like Doris do not ask you, what is it that you need or how can I help? But I will bring you food and then we can talk. How to make sense of someone so wonderfully to suffer. Throughout the scriptures, you can find Bible verses that will uplift you and give you hope. One of the ones are the most famous according to Google in a search. It says that it's Psalm 121. It's right there in the back of your bulletin. It begins with a call to, the question is, where does my help come from? It doesn't come from the mountain, if you analyze verse 1. This is a song that people in a journey from their residence to Jerusalem in worship. This is a song that they will sing. In this journey, as you look into the world, you will see how little you know. And as you walk into Jerusalem, you will see mountains and hills and dangers and beautiful things. And it will make you wonder, and they will sing together, our help comes from the Lord, the one that makes the heaven and the earth. Me telling you that this is a song that they will sing as they are walking makes you no surprise that it's verse 3. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. Verse 5 does repeat sort of the same concept. However, there is a banana peel in the middle of the text for you. Something to trick you, something to make you consider, which I want you to consider. Verse 7. The Lord will keep you from all harm. Is the text lying? Because the text says, it doesn't matter what translation you read, the text does say that the Lord will keep you from harm, all harm. How can you read that verse and still deal with cancer? Cancer being anything that takes you the love of your life, a good friend, a trusted friend. How can you make sense of such a statement that the Lord will keep you from all harm when we know fully well that the only thing for you to suffer, the only thing that you need is to be alive? Mario, that's not very encouraging right now. Which is why you ought to read the text with text. It is true that the only thing that you need to suffer is to be alive. But from one point to the other, there is plenty of to experience. I want you to now look at the scripture in the middle of your bulletin, John 6. Verse 2 will tell you that there is a huge crowd following him, Jesus. And they were following him wherever he went. But why? Not because they understood Jesus or because they understood the gospel or the good news. They were following Jesus because of what he did. Verse 2 will tell you that because they saw his miraculous signs and he healed the sick. Verse 3, Jesus climbed a hill, much like what Psalm 121 tells you, and the disciples sat around him. Jesus then realized that there was a huge crowd and turning to Philip, where can we buy bread to feed all these people? See, this is where I will tell you that there is two kinds of people. The people that says, I don't know. And the people will say, let me figure it out. In there you have two examples. Philip, who gets excuses. Then Peter, who acknowledges beginning of the solution and then finishes with the question, but what is good is with this huge crowd, we cannot feed that many people. Talking about this child that brought what he had. Jesus is one. You can be either like the disciples, always finding excuses why not to do what you're supposed to do, or you can be that child that brings whatever they had. My friends, three things I can share with you at this moment when you realize that there's two kinds of people: the disciples who thought they understood and didn't know what to do, and the people who knew what to do because they were trying to understand. If I were to ask you what is the miracle of the story, you will say that Jesus just fed that many people and there were so many leftovers. But I will invite you today to consider much in the story of Doris in what you have heard. Because the story that I just said about me saying, okay, it didn't happen once, but happened multiple times while she was in session, when she was in deacons, when she was in PW. In fact, at one point, Doris wanted to stop PW. She had no reason to continue, but she had some ideas of how to. And she says that I convinced her to not stop PW. Can you believe that? I don't. The only thing I said, but Doris, oh, you know that's right. Three things I can tell you when you reflect upon the life of Doris and her ministry and this text, John 6. If you see someone in trouble, struggling, suffering, in pain, first thing to ask is ask them to sit down. Pay attention to verse 10. Tell everyone to sit down. Second of all, verse 12, make sure that their belly's full. She tried to feed me shellfish several times, even though I'm allergic to them. But then she found out that I love Jim cookies. First one is invite people to sit down with you, just like Jesus did. Second one, ask them, feed them, nurture them, because people are not only looking for food, they're also looking for food. They're also looking for food. Last but not least, invite them to see what God is doing on that day. Verse 14. When the people saw him do these miraculous signs, they exclaimed, surely he is the prophet. Doris, like this child that brought the bread and the fish, Doris, to be effective, she didn't need a title of disciple. She just needed to share of what she had. And that's my invitation for you. That you do not wait for a title or the convenience, but that you invite people to sit down with you, that you share of the food that you had on that day, whether it's real food or what the person needs on that day, and that you sit with them and you invite them for them to pay attention to see the revelation of God on that day. She was already sick. And during the sermon or announcements, I called the crazy, yeah. I made a mistake, and I was reminded right away that they are not, and we're talking about age at this moment. I said the crazy church lady. I didn't say it. And when I called her, she just laughed. And she didn't say anything about it. She just said, you're going to hear about it all of your life. Now, the joke's on us, because if that's the story that I have to say to make us laugh and treasure someone like Doris, I will call you old every single day. My friends, let us invite one another to sit down, to eat and share of what we have, and to experience a revelation of God on this day. Would you join me singing hymn 467, How Great Thou Art? Please be comfortable. In a very subtle way, I answered the question I posed with you, but let me be more assertive. To the question of understanding verse 7, how to understand that God will keep you from all harm, I want you to remember Doris at this moment. Cancer did not win the battle. I understand very well that Doris died, but cancer did not win. Cancer did not take Doris away from us. Doris was true to herself until the end. My friends, do not be afraid of cancer or death or violence. Be afraid of being alone. And Doris was never alone. God will keep you from all harm because God continues to watch us in the trust of one another. Would you pray with me? O God, who gave us birth, you are ever more ready to hear than when we are to pray. You know our needs before we ask and our ignorance in asking. Show us your grace that as we face the mystery of death, we may see the light of eternity. Help us understand that you're always with us. Help us to understand that while bad things happen and we die, you're truly never leaving us alone. You're always with us. For everything else, O gracious Father, we wish to cover it with the prayer that we learned from our Lord Jesus Christ, who taught his disciples to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. May you go out in peace, trusting the ability that you have to reflect and reveal God's love today. May the strength of God the Father, the teachings of the Son, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be forever yours. Go in peace. Please join us in a time of remembrance and a time of fellowship in the gathering place. Peace be with you.